to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good afternoon, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Thursday, December the 26th. I am your host, Michael Leva, flying solo today. We got a lot to talk about here in the world of the Miami Dolphins in the lead up to this game against the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, which may matter, it might not matter. We got a ton of news, and we're going to talk about that all on today's show. But before I get to all that, a quick word from our sponsor.
The DolphinsTalk.com podcast network is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive, Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you. International fans, too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com.
All right, and one bit of housekeeping before we get into the show. We are up for two, that's right, not one, two Sports Podcast Awards. And if you could take a second to vote, if you are looking at this on YouTube, I have the links to where to go vote pinned up here in the chat right below. And if you're not, and if you're listening in podcast form, it's on our social media channels at Dolphins Talk on either Threads, Instagram, or Twitter. Takes a second and help us out, hopefully win one of these awards. Okay, first story I want to talk about is Bradley Chubb. As Bradley Chubb has been in the news here the past few days, it was announced earlier this week that Bradley Chubb will not play this year in 2024. His season, which never really started, is over, which has led to a lot of speculation about the future of Bradley Chubb in Miami. Will he be here next year in 2025? And it's a legitimate question to ask. And I think right now, if you're the Dolphins, there's a few things you got to remember. Number one, the Dolphins traded a first and a fourth round pick. You know, there's some other pieces in there like Chase Edmonds stuff, but essentially it was a first and a fourth for Chubb. And, you know, he's only played 23 games since he's been with the Miami Dolphins. And really this injury, you know, not to, you know, I've done shows in recent weeks about Mike McDaniel and how bad he is as a head coach. And I stand by every one of them. Every one of those shows and everything I said in those shows. This really is his fault why Chubb missed this entire season, because Mike McDaniel, again, not a head coach, not paying attention to the actual game, let Chubb go on the field in the final minutes of a blowout to the Ravens. This week last year was week 17. He let him go out there in garbage time with just like a couple minutes left when Miami had given up 50 points. The game was already over, and Chubb gets hurt in a meaningless play at the end of a game. And, you know, when you give up a first and a fourth, and the guy's only played 23 games since you obtained him in 2022, and it's your head coach's fault he gets hurt, it's a tough pill to swallow, especially because this injury was really serious. For all offseason since this happened, we just thought Chubb tore his ACL. He actually tore his ACL, PCL, and MCL. He tore them all. And this is actually his third ACL injury, and it's the second ACL injury on the same knee. So he had one ACL injury on one knee, two on the other knee, and the other knee being this one is now got the two on it. Right now, Miami is projected to be $12 million over the salary cap heading into 2025. That's the fourth worst cap situation in the league now. I know you can restructure, you can cut guys, you can open up cap space easily, but as we sit today, they're $12 million over and have the fourth worst cap situation. Bradley Chubb is going to count $29 million against the cap in 2025. $29 million for a guy coming off a major injury, tearing his ACL, PCL, and MCL. And again, third ACL injury at least. Chubb's going to be 29 in June. And aside from those 3 ACL injuries, he also had major ankle surgery when he was with the Broncos. So, we're at this when you're inching towards 30 years old, major ankle surgery, 3 ACL injuries, PCL, MCL now in the past year. You have to wonder if he's going to start to slow down, if he's going to be the same guy when he does return. Is he now, quote unquote, damaged goods, so to speak? Because that's a lot of wear and tear. That's a lot of injuries on a guy who's approaching 30. And essentially, the Miami Dolphins have 3 options that they can do with Chubb. And let's go through all 3. Option number 1 is you don't want to pay, or you don't want to have Chubb count $29 million against the cap in 2025. You restructure him. Here's the problem with that. Again, 29, all these injuries, you restructure him, you're just kicking the can down the road, meaning he's going to be on your books. He's going to be on your cap longer than he is now. And eventually, the chickens are going to come home to roost. So yes, if you restructure him, short-term gain, you're going to open up salary cap space in 2025, where you're going to be able to sign other players. You're going to open up salary cap space so you can get under the cap, so you're not like 12 million over, all that good stuff. That's good. Checks a lot of boxes of all positives. The negative is, when you get to 2027, 2028, where he's probably not even on the team, or he might be retired by then, he's still going to be on your cap at some point. And that's the bad. And, you like to avoid cap hell if possible, not prolong it and just push it off and just say someone else's problem at some point. That's never a good thing, especially if you're a fan of a team. That's option 1, is just keep them, restructure them, lower the cap number. But no, you're going to have this guy who's got all these injuries on your books for many years to come. Option 2 is you just move on from him totally. And you have options here, but the options, again, it depends how you want to manage the cap. So and I would say trade or release, there's no chance of a trade because no team's going to absorb this contract of a guy who's had all these injuries and who's due $29 million this year. There's no chance of a trade. So I'm just going to talk about release. If the Dolphins release Bradley Chubb prior to June 1st, that means his dead cap number next year is $27.4 million, and you only save $1.9 million. Meaning if you cut him, you're getting less than $2 million opening up on the cap. And if you keep him, you pay him $29. If you cut him, he's on your cap for $27. It makes no sense. So to just release him pre-June 1st, it makes 0 sense. That will not happen. But remember the Xavier Howard situation last offseason with that post-June 1st designation where they cut him in like February, March, whatever, with a post-June 1st designation, meaning all the cap space you get cannot be used to June 1st. Well, with Bradley Chubb, if you cut him with a post-June 1st, in 2025, his dead cap number is only $9 million, which isn't awful. You open up $20 million in cap space. This year, again, that you can't use it though in March and April when everyone's signing people. That $20 million opens up June 1st. But in 2026, the dead cap number for Chubb's 18.3. So you're paying $27 million in dead cap money. If you just do it pre-June 1st, you're going to pay it all this year. If you do it post-June 1st, you take $9 million of dead money this year, and then you take 18.3 next year. So that's one option. I don't think that's a good option, but that's one option. The other option is you just keep Bradley Chubb on his current deal and you don't do a damn thing. You pay him $29 million in 2025. And you can make a case for this one, actually, because you got to remember, Jaylen Phillips tore his ACL in October. Jaylen Phillips is not going to be ready for the start of the 2025 season. He's probably going to miss all September, and he'll probably miss part, if not all of October. You probably won't see Jaylen Phillips until like November-ish next season. So if you want to pair up Chop Robinson with hopefully a healthy Chubb by next September, which he would be healthy because there he took him off the list here and he's been practicing. you can at least then have at the start of the season, you got Chubb, you got Chop as you wait, 5 or 6 or 8 weeks into the season so you get back Jaylen Phillips. And to me, this might be the most realistic option because, again, if you restructure him, at some point, Miami cannot keep restructuring all these guys like Armstead, like Chubb, the guys who are in Hill, who are getting up there in age, who are going to start to see the downside of their careers come, and they're going to be on the books forever. Like at some point, these guys got to get off the books, and I wouldn't restructure them. Now, that's me. And we know Chris Grier ain't going nowhere. He's going to be the general manager. What I think Chris Grier is going to do, he's probably going to restructure him because Chris Grier knows his ass is on the line now, and he only cares about 2025. And if Chubb counts for a whole bunch of money on the cap in 2026, 27, 28, 29, he don't give a crap because he might not be here. That's going to be someone else's problem. So if it were me, I would just, if you're not going to move on from Chubb, then you just let him play at the 29 million mark. Yes, he's not worth it. It's way too much money, but you gave him the contract. No one to blame but yourself if you're the Dolphins. And here's the other reason why it might be worth holding on to him. Emmanuel Ogbah, he's going to be gone. Mohamed Kamara has shown you nothing this season that, he might be good in time, but he was a 5th-round pick. He's played very little. You can't go into next year depending on Mohamed Kamara. Quentin Bell has had a flash here or there, but, he's just a guy. So you might need Chubb to line up opposite Chop next year if 2025 you're actually trying to win games, which they are because this is not a rebuilding team. This is a win-now team with all the aging vets they have. So I think if it were me, I would just keep Chubb at his current deal and maybe look to move on from him after the 2025 season in February, March of 2026. But I have a feeling Chris Grier will probably restructure him. And, yes, you get salary cap space now, but there's going to be a day where the chickens come home to roost, and that's not going to be a good thing. I want to talk real quick about the playoffs. I know with Kansas City in that win against Pittsburgh, it doesn't look great for the Dolphins, and some people don't even understand that. It's because for Miami to get in, they need the Chargers to lose pretty much their last 2. They need the Broncos to lose the last 2. And for some of that to happen, they need Kansas City to actually be playing for something week 18. Well, now Kansas City's already locked up the first round bye. And a lot of people think, well, they're just going to rest everyone week 18, not risk anything, and their opponent will get an easy win, which essentially knocked Miami out of the playoffs. I think Miami's probably going to be out before week 18 because I think the Broncos and Chargers will both win this week, and that will just knock out Miami anyways. But here's what I'll say. If Miami's alive going into the next week, when it comes to the Chiefs and if they're going to play hard week 18, I think they will. So I think Dolphins fans got to take it easy. Take it easy. I mean, look, they might sit everyone, but it just seems very unlikely because you have to look at it this way. If the last meaningful game the Chiefs played was yesterday, Christmas Day, December 25th, and now they have a first-round bye, if they sit everyone next week, week 18, that means you played the 25th of December. You're going to sit everyone on the game on January 5th. Then you got a bye, so no one's going to play January 12th. That means you're going from December 25th to January 19th without a game. And no coach in their right mind, especially Andy Reid, who's a smart guy, is going to want his team to go essentially 1 month without his key players, his starters playing a game. There's having rest, and then there's having too much rest. You cannot take your foot off the gas totally. You cannot not have serious reps in a game for literally a month. Because Kansas City is on a roll. They've only lost 1 game all year. And, I know they get every bounce. They get every, lucky call. Things go their way. Great. But, you don't want to take your foot off the gas. So I think week 18, if anything, I think you'll see the Chiefs starters play at least 3 quarters, at least, if not the whole game. And I don't think they're just going to sit everyone. So if Miami somehow after this weekend is still alive and fans of the Dolphins, all of us are going to be rooting for the Chiefs week 18, I don't think it's going to be something to be worried about them sitting everybody because I don't think Andy Reid's going to want his, Mahomes and Kelsey and all of his key players not playing for a full month before their first playoff game. I just don't see that happening. So I would say Dolphins fans, worry about beating the Browns and worry about everything else afterwards. And just take it easy on the Chiefs because I think they're going to play their guys next week. And it might not even matter after Saturday. This game between Miami and the Browns might not even matter on Sunday, all depending on what happens on Saturday with the Broncos and Chargers. All right, before we get to the rest of the show, a quick shout out to everyone listening at finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Podchaser, iHeartRadio, Audible, or one of the other hundreds of platforms you're on, take a second, hit that subscribe button right now. Because even though the Dolphins season's winding down, when it comes to the offseason, the comings, the goings, the trades, who's going to get cut, who's going to restructure, who they're going to draft, who they're going to sign in free agency. We're going to have you covered with shows almost every day of the week because we know the offseason is where there's a lot of news, a lot of rumors, and a lot of rumblings going on, and you're not going to want to miss an episode of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. So hit that subscribe button on whichever platform you listen to. And if you're watching right now on YouTube, smash that like button, hit that little thumbs up, smash that like button, helps us out a lot. Also, shout out to Mellow Seltzer. Everyone go to mellowseltzer.com for information on how and where to purchase. It's the seltzer taking America by storm. A THC seltzer comes in wild berry, grapefruit, strawberry, mango, and half and half. Okay, two things here to wrap up the show. Number one is Anthony Weaver. I see Dolphins fans are getting a little nervous here that Anthony Weaver's going to get a head coaching job. He's going to leave the Dolphins. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? The Dolphins are going to lose their defensive coordinator. The sky is falling. Let me clutch my pearls. Oh, my God, Anthony Weaver's leaving. Again, take it easy. First off, I'd be shocked if there's an owner and if there's an organization out there that's going to hire Anthony Weaver this offseason to make him their team's head coach. I like Anthony Weaver. He's done a fine job this year. But when I watch every Sunday this team play, I don't see Anthony Weaver as head coach material. Call me crazy. Now, maybe someday, but not now. Weaver was the defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans in 2020. 1 year. Had J.J. Watt and everything. They were an unmitigated disaster on defense. He was bad. The defense was bad. This year in Miami, he's been a coordinator for 1 season. The team's not going to make the playoffs, most likely. What are teams like? Why? Why would Anthony Weaver be on a list to be a head coach? What has he done to show anyone that he's head coach material? Again, I like Weaver. I want him back next year. He's not a bad guy. But if he were to leave, I wouldn't lose a minute's sleep over because he is replaceable. And I don't see teams knocking down the door to hire Anthony Weaver. And I know in previous years, he's gotten an interview here or an interview there to be a head coach. And great. There's a lot of assistant coaches every now and then get that opportunity. That doesn't mean he was in some team's final 2 or final 5 or he almost got this job. He just interviewed. And we know, as right or wrong as it is, and I'm going to say this as nicely as possible, for someone like Anthony Weaver, those interviews might have been to check a box for the Rooney Rule. It might not even been a serious interview, which is unfortunate, but that's just the world we live in. Not going to mince words. I'm not going to go any further on that either, but we know that happens in the NFL. So I like Weaver. He's done a good job this year with the talent he has, which really isn't much. That secondary for Miami is so bad. I mean, Javon Holland's been horrible this year. Jordan Poyer is the worst safety in the league. Cater Coe, I know he made a nice play this past week. In general, has been terrible this year. Cam Smith is a bust. He can't play. When he does play, he can't play. Outside of Ramsey, that secondary has stunk. Kendall Fuller's had 2 concussions. He got hurt again. He's probably all done for. I mean, he hasn't been healthy at all this year either. That secondary is so bad. So what Weaver's done this year with that secondary alone, absolutely great. And they're second to last as well in sacks in the league. They have almost no sacks. So I give Weaver a lot of credit for what he's kind of done. Now, look, there's been some games that have been rough to watch. That game just a couple weeks ago, home versus the Jets, they couldn't stop a runny nose. I mean, until the final drive, they couldn't do. The only reason they won that game is because Rodgers threw a pass to Adams that forced him out of bounds. If he doesn't do that, then they lose that game. And they were terrible that game. But they were very good against Houston. They were very good this past week in San Francisco. He's had his moments, no doubt. But, I do not see a world where Anthony Weaver, maybe he gets an interview here or there, but what has he done to be a head coach? I guess I should just say. I don't know. I don't see it. And if I'm a fan of the Dolphins and you're worried he might leave, I wouldn't worry. And even if something happens and he was offered a head coaching job and he left, great for Anthony Weaver. We'll replace him. It's not like we're losing. It's not like you're losing, a top end coordinator here. It's not. He's a good coach. He's a good coach. Let's stop with that. Okay. Last topic. With New Year's Eve coming and New Year's, almost 2025 here, about 1 week away, a little bit less. One New Year's resolution I'm going to talk about now. And I include myself in this, but it's also for the majority of fans of the Dolphins. So I'm going to take a pause here. I want everyone to hear me when I say this. Enough of Andrew Van Ginkel. As we turn the page into 2025, enough of Andrew Van Ginkel. Nobody loved Andrew Van Ginkel more than me. If you listen to this podcast the past 4 or 5 years, nobody pounded the table for Andrew Van Ginkel more than me. I loved Andrew Van Ginkel. I was sad to see him go. But it's time we all move on. It's time we all move on. And every time he makes a tackle, he gets a fumble recovery, he gets a sack, you don't have to run to social media and go, oh my God, I can't believe we decided. Folks, he's been gone for months. We got through this whole season with no Andrew Van Ginkel. Enough. If fans of Dolphins got to get over it, got to move on. Did Chris Grier screw up? Yes, absolutely. No one's going to argue that. But at some point, you can't be obsessed with this every stinking time he makes a play with the Vikings. I mean, Kyle Van Noy this year. Kyle Van Noy has 11.5 sacks with 1 game still left in the year, so he might get more. I don't see fans of the Dolphins every time Kyle Van Noy has a sack flipping out, running to social media. I can't believe we let Kyle. I know he was let go a few years ago. It's the same thing. We all like Van Ginkel. He's a great family man. His wife's on social media. She's awesome. Everyone's rooting for Van Ginkel to do well in Minnesota. But at some point, folks, move on. You can't live in this world where every time he makes a play, you run to social media and throw a temper tantrum. We get it. And here's the other thing, too, I'll say about this. If Chris Grier and the Dolphins did re-sign Andrew Van Ginkel, you know who you would not have on your team? Chop Robinson. Because the Dolphins would have been like, well, we got it. And even though with no Chubb and no Jaylen Phillips, they're probably going to miss some or most of all 2024. We have to take an edge in round 1. If they re-signed Andrew Van Ginkel, they would not have taken Chop Robinson in round 1. They might take a guard. They may have taken a wide receiver. They may have taken, who knows who they would have taken. They wouldn't have taken Chop Robinson, though. And Chop Robinson's been great. And yes, it'd be a perfect world. You have both Chop Robinson and Andrew Van Ginkel. Absolutely. But it's not. So my New Year's resolution for myself, and I hope for other fans of Dolphins, follow my lead. Enough of Andrew Van Ginkel. He's in Minnesota now, living his life. He's going to the playoffs. He's on a very good team. Let him enjoy it. And fans of Dolphins, we got to stop, flipping out every time he makes a play, saying, I can't believe Chris Grier. There's a million reasons to fire Chris Grier. And yes, mishandling Andrew Van Ginkel is one of them. But enough's enough. We all got to move on. And I think I'll just leave it at that. All right, that's all for today's show. I want to thank everyone for listening. We'll have more shows later this week. I think Josh and Aaron are going to have a show Thursday night. I'm probably have another show Friday or Saturday in the lead up to the Cleveland game. And then after the Cleveland game, myself and Tom post-game wrap-up show. So be on the lookout for that. Everyone, go to the website, DolphinsTalk.com. We got a bunch of new articles up there right now. Ryan Van Hoover's written a couple. Austin's written a couple. I've written a couple. We got a ton of new articles up. Great stuff. Check it out on the website, DolphinsTalk.com. And whatever social media platform you're on, you can follow us at DolphinsTalk, including TikTok. We're putting up a ton of content on TikTok, so check out our TikTok page at DolphinsTalk as well. Everyone have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you again after a while. And folks, don't forget, we must put an end to highway profanity.